Coming soon is Season 3 of the Code Story Podcast. With 2 seasons under our belt, we've dialed into the founder tidbits that you want to hear most. And we're going to take a few new approaches to how we shape those conversations, produce those episodes, and bring your favorite show to life. You'll hear from amazing guests such as Cole Raven of Podchaser, Dave Zorab of Chartable, and Mark Hendricks of Wild Ventures. And in these interviews, we continue to uncover the stories you want to hear most. Stories about success, mistakes, scaling, building, and making trade-offs, all in the name of building the next big thing. This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. Season 3 releases very soon, so make sure you hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player. Tune in for more great stories from our founders. All this and more on Code Story. Make sure to check us out at codestory.co. On the site, you can sign up for our newsletter, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and keep up to date with the latest episodes of the Code Story Podcast. Thanks for listening.
What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Whether you're winding down your week or starting your weekend off, we're going to get it popping today. Before I bring my guest on, the message of the week. This is from my guest today. He's very active on all social media, but particularly Twitter, which is where him and I met. This dude pumps out tons of awesome quotes and just motivational thoughts on a daily basis, like multiple. Bing, 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 bing. The dude's cranking them out. And this is one he put up not too long ago. And it makes me think of him, but also the current situation, kind of where everybody's at, what the mindset is. It's short and it's sweet, and we'll dissect it here in a few minutes. Lions don't bother themselves with the opinions of sheep. Just a friendly reminder. With that, I would like to zoom all the way to Columbia, Missouri, and introduce my guest, Ryan Clearwater. Ryan, are you here?
What's going on? How are you doing this morning?
What's going on? Bro, you got the legit setup. Neon green
man.
Headphones too. Damn,
yeah, they're my wives,
man.
Yeah.
I'm the
stole them
host.
from my
I'm
wife.
kidding. That's awesome.
I'll send them to you.
Dope. Yeah, come closer to that mic. That sounded really clear.
Okay, great.
That's the Rode you were talking about?
No, this is the Blue Yeti X.
Yeah, Blue Yeti. And you got that? You're running into your cell phone with that?
Straight into my cell phone. I've got an adapter. It was kind of this hit or miss thing where the guy said it might work, it might not. And I said, it's cool. The host of this show is understanding, so we'll pivot. I think they call it a pivot.
We will pivot, yes. That's really dope. You'll have to send me the specs on that afterwards, because I'm always playing. I've used lav mics, same thing I'm running into my cell. And even before all this went down, I had to test it a little bit because the station was closed down a couple times. So I wanted to continue the show, even though the producer was out of the country. And I was like, man, I got to do my show anyways. So I figured out like this remote setup, and there's all kinds of gadgets and and stuff going into it.
Of course.
Yeah,
what kind of lava mic do you have?
It's a Booyah. Booyah. BOYA. But I've also got some Rode stuff that I like as well. They both are highly recommended and pretty versatile. And I like it because I've often hosted in kind of chaotic environments, like my restaurant, and there's stuff going on in the background.
Oh, sure.
You can hear it a little more subtly, but when you have the lav mic, it just like barely picks it up. And but everybody's still kind of clear in it, and I enjoy that aspect of it. But yeah, you got a really great sound coming out of that, man. That's dope.
Thank you.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a good day. Taking some time out of my day to do this is awesome. With my work outside of the Twitter feed and all of that, which isn't really considered work, right?
Depends on how you do it.
It all depends on how you do it. Yeah. So I work in politics outside of the motivational kind of life evaluation stuff. And so we have a very busy week coming up next week. So this is a welcome reprieve from gearing up for that. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, my pleasure. So you're in Columbia, Missouri. Did I get that correct?
That's right. Home of the Tigers. We're smack dab in the middle of the state, about hour and a half, 2 hours from St. Louis on the east side. And then about 2 hours west of us is Kansas City, home of the Super Bowl Kansas City Chiefs.
I knew you were going to plug for the Chiefs. I just could smell it. Have to. It's been decades, man. And so had to do it.
Had to do it.
So give everybody, just for context, a little background. Your parents were entrepreneurs themselves. They had their own business. You grew up in that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So growing up, my family has always been involved in the community. When I as far back as I can remember, when I was young, I'm talking 3-4 years old. We broke ground on a daycare center. I say we. I mean, I was, in diapers probably.
you were digging. You had the shovel.
Yeah, they had me working. Family work, and they broke ground, laid the concrete, and built a successful daycare center with the promise that they were going to own and operate it for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So in that 10-year period, I am blessed in the fact that I had a loving family that made sure that every one of my needs was met. I have a developmentally disabled sister, so they also made sure that her needs were met, whether that was me going to a soccer practice or her going to her therapeutic horseback riding. We were always blessed in that regard. Now, with that being said, though, when you run a daycare center, there are other children involved, of course, and those children's needs also need to be met. So for me, it was I'm early on in my life. I mean, I was able to decipher when it was time for me and when it was time for other kids. And so that value of being able to say, you know what, life doesn't revolve around me, and I should take a little bit of care and compassion and throw that towards other kids, was instilled very early on.
Yeah. That's a great lesson, especially for right now.
Sure, definitely. And that's I'm thankful that you had me on here. I'm definitely blessed that you had me on here because I think we can all agree that in today's climate, political and social, economic, people don't have, they're very quick to judge. People don't tend to have a lot of outwardly compassion for people, especially on social media and places like Twitter, where you get a very small amount of characters to communicate with
Twitter.
individuals, especially on Twitter, and even on long form platforms like Facebook. You lose a lot of that nuance and a lot of that communication. So it's very easy for people to kind of get set in their ways and to lose any kind of ability to talk.
Well, and I say this in business too, that if you're in digital services and your customer is not directly in front of you, right. It's easy to say certain things that you might not say if they were right in front of you. And I'm fortunate to have been in customer service, tangible, real life customer service for over 25 years. Practice that, this person's directly in front of me. There's a lot more accountability there than if you're behind a screen, whether it's business, whether it's your views on politics or social policy. One of the things, because I have children too, and they've grown up, with the small business owner and helping with
Sure.
small businesses. And one policy I started to institute recently amongst the family, because we've got 3 kids, and it can get hectic and crazy, and they've all been in the restaurant and seen how that operates and how to be successful there. And it's not by treating each other, poorly. So I just told them all to imagine
That's right.
when you're talking to each other, you're speaking to a customer in the restaurant, how would you act? Like, of course, maybe you disagree, or maybe there's some negotiation on certain things, but you want to do it with a certain amount of tact that everybody's happy at the end and everybody kind of gets what they want.
That's
right.
So
I was like, we're gonna start this rule. Like, if you wouldn't speak to a customer that way, and these are children, that
right.
I'm doing this to. It's an experiment,
But you have to. I mean, we have to take a little more stock in the fact that what our children learn early on is going to compound for years into their future.
Yeah,
so you have to instill those kinds of values into our children, especially when I see parents all the time, and I'll be completely honest with you, I'm one of them. Try not to be, but there's times I've got an 18-month-old son, and with the quarantine going on, I had to do a lot of daddy daycare here at the house. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it was instead of engaging, it was just easier to throw the phone at him, or throw Blue's Clues or Paw Patrol on the TV, right? So being able to instill those kinds of values and be a role model for your kids, and also to be a conduit for knowledge for them. Right? Somebody that they can trust to go to for advice and wisdom. And that's, and I'll just kind of spitball here for a freestyle here for a minute, but that's not just for kids, right? I mean, you're talking about coworkers, you're talking about people beneath you in the chain, and like, I was going to say the chain of command, but people beneath you in your business, people alongside you. And then of course, people above you, it's instilling that kind of culture that really can set a business like a restaurant off, or really, frankly, any business.
Anything. Yeah, absolutely. So, especially on your website, sure. you talk a bit about that, and Fidelity Strategies. What's that all about?
So Fidelity Strategies is a relationship-based company. What we do is we help individuals communicate with other people better, whether that's personally or professionally. We also evaluate people and businesses to see what their strengths and weaknesses are, and identify solutions for them to be able to, what would you say, strengthen their weaknesses. So it's a lot of communication. It's been challenging.
Right.
I just started this company this year.
Great.
We used to do some social media. Political social media stuff, but I've kind of shied away from that a little bit, just because it's very easy to get caught in the echo chamber of politics. Mm-hmm. So while we do political consulting, we do a lot more personal and professional consulting and development.
Awesome.
What I was going to say is, with the COVID situation, of course, a lot of those one-on-one meetings aren't happening. So we have to resort to things like, I could have sat there and said, you know what, I'm just going to pump the brakes on this. The time isn't right. That doesn't do any kind of service.
Yeah.
And that's no due diligence to the people that need help the most and are out seeking it. So being able to have platforms like social media, Zoom, FaceTime, it actually makes communicating a heck of a lot easier, because the travel component's no longer there. And immediate feedback, I think, is great. So in that way, nobody is waiting for an email or a text or a return phone call to clarify some of the more finer points of personal development work. So that's what Fidelity Strategies is, in my terms, or what I would think is a nutshell.
Kickoff? You said this year?
So not 2020, but within like the 365 day calendar year. Yeah.
So you're young still in terms of that iteration. I'm curious, something you said earlier about your parents. Mm-hmm. They committed to a 10-year business plan. Do you know why they chose that time frame? Just out of curiosity, because I've heard that before.
Yeah, for them, I think it was more. And they're fascinating people. If you ever wanted, I don't know if they'd be able to know how to set up a microphone, but they'd be fascinating people to talk to as well, because coming from an adult perspective of running a business. But from what I've gathered, the reason why was so that they had a clear plan for the future in the short term. So they knew that if they could build something within that 10-year period, build it to the best of their ability, then they would be able to take the experiences from that and transfer them over into their family life and other professional ventures that they're wanting to get across. So,
Gotcha.
I mean, it was, man, it was like 10 years. I mean, not to the dot, but, or to the T, but it was 10 years of dedicated service to our community that, and then they got out. So the business that's running the daycare still stands under a different name.
Gotcha.
I drive by it almost every single day. And from what I understand, it's flourishing. And to know that my parents had a direct impact on the future lives of kids. I mean, I don't know if that business would still be around to serve the community if my folks hadn't built it. So it's surreal.
Understood.
Yeah.
Great. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a minute. Okay. Awesome, everybody. You listening to the Entrepreneurial Web.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.
Do you run or are ready to open your own business? Hi, I'm Jeremiah Fox. I've been operating and opening small business for the last 25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Talking Alternative Radio, 24 hours a day.
All right, everybody. Welcome back once again, Friday, high noon. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox, here with my guest from Columbia, Missouri, Ryan Clearwater.
Como.
What does that mean?
Columbia, Missouri, man. Como.
Come
on now.
Right. Hey, I've been on the East Coast almost all my life. I don't know anything. I didn't even know there was a country out there. I was like, what? It's not just New York.
I know. Yeah. It's, they call it flyover states. I call it home.
All right. So we were just talking on the last segment about your family's business that you were a part of as a kid and their 10-year business plan. I've heard the reason I asked about that is because it's interesting that somebody back then was doing that, because that's more of a common thing now, where I feel like earlier on, families would build businesses that they intended to run and possibly even pass down.
It's a generational thing.
Yeah. So now what I hear from a lot of people, they say, go for 10 years, 5 is too short. If you survive 10 years, especially as a brick and mortar business these days in this climate, that's like huge success because of the rapidity of like just flux. And now we've got a whole new component,
with innovative destruction occurring and the advent of the internet, businesses, it's kind of that whole adapt or die kind of idea, right? So, you used to hear all the time that vast majority of businesses would have to shut down after a year And then if it's 5 years, yeah, that went down 5-10%. And I don't even remember the statistics, but that number was astronomically high. So with how fast paced everything is now, I mean, that 5-year period, I think, is kind of now the 10-year period. So I think you're right. I think that businesses should, I mean, to each their own, right? But I mean, I think it is kind of this deal where it's, for me, if I were to invest that time and opportunity into a business, I would love to stick with it personally. I know others would love to move on and try to experience new things and serve people better in other aspects. But for me, I don't know if I could leave something like that. So
yeah. I mean, it's almost like the startup mentality, but like just on a really slow pace, right? Like startups will like build it quickly. They want to sell it. It's like, yeah, we did the same thing. Just we took 10 years to do it, but at least they did sell it, and that it's still there. That's a testament to, I mean, I kind of am fascinated by that. And I'm on the fence about businesses that I've started and been involved with. Well, sure. Is the goal to build it up and part ways with it, but so it continues still. It's a service to the community, and it goes on to succeed, but somebody else gets to dabble in it. And then like I'm kind of all over the place that way. I kind of can understand that, where I could just hop into something else as well.
Jeremiah, I don't think that there is one right or wrong answer there.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that I've realized as I've dabbled into my business consulting is what is it that you want? What are your driving factors? Do you not have the time anymore and I hate saying, do you not have the time? Is it not a priority for you anymore? Is it something that you're wanting to move on from? And if so, and if you hold something else to have more value, move on. But let's make sure that you're doing it for the reasons that you're going to be comfortable with. So, so like I said, to each their own on that, so I understand that if you're having a struggle or if anybody else is having a struggle on making those kinds of decisions, it's a tough one.
It is. And what I've found is that, for me personally, businesses operate better when I'm hands-on with them more often. And it's not a matter of necessarily you don't have enough time, but like you're only so much lion, right? There's only so much lion to go around, and it's hard to be. I mean, there was a point where I was running 5 places at the same time, and they were all geographically very close to each other. Like 4 of them were were within 2 blocks, and one was just a little outside of that. But still, I mean, you just can't be everywhere at once, even though you're that geographically close. It's hard to keep your hands on the machinery of all of those things. And we had to adjust things to where we could make it more manageable. I think that representation is really important when ownership or leadership is there. If you find the right managers and you're making enough money to pay them, that's kind of great. Right. That's rare though. I think it's becoming more and more rare these days where you find people that can represent your values and continue with your culture the way that you would, or at least close to it, in a way that makes that business really sustainable and not just anonymous. Because I think what we're seeing right now, I don't know what it's like where you're at, but in New York, all those places that were just kind of anonymous, they're just disappearing because they didn't have the culture. They didn't have the following, there wasn't that connection to the community. And like, it sounds like to me, what your parents did was that they really focused on that community connection. And that's something that we've definitely tried to harness. It's really hard to do if you're not there.
It's very tough. It's very tough. And so something that you said jumped out at me, the fact that you have to be, or sometimes you might feel like you have to be everywhere at once. If you're running 5 different businesses, or you have 5 different managers, you can't be everywhere at once. Something that I learned in the military was that there's this aspect called decentralized command. Mm-hmm. So on the flip side of that is centralized command, which is where you are it and nobody can make a decision until they pass it through you. And I don't know a single successful business that is able to do that. You have to be able to be decentralized so that you can make decisions when they have to come to you. But as long as the businesses are being taken care of, the patrons are being taken care of, the employees are being taken care of, and everybody within your company has the ability to maneuver and the flexibility to make decisions that advance your culture and your mission statement, that's obvious. In my opinion, that's obviously going to be preferred over that other thing, because then on the centralized side, you're not able to get to everybody, and then you're doing a disservice to your employees, and then more importantly, your patrons. So yeah, I don't know how anybody would be able to do that.
I like how that worked out. I wanted to rope in your military experience. I didn't know how we were going to get there. That was just so seamless and really nice. So tell everybody a little bit about your military background.
So I will start by saying I was an ROTC cadet at the University of Missouri. I graduated from Rockbridge High School way back in 2004. To some people, that might make me a baby. To some people, it might make me an old man. But in high school, that was when, of course, 9/11 happened. I'd always had this affinity for playing Army guy. I always had the GI Joes and the Green Soldiers. And so ended up being able to go to the Air Force ROTC program. After 1 year there, I decided that rather than fly the planes, I would love to have the opportunity to jump out of the planes. So I transferred over to the Army ROTC program, commissioned, and then ended up, I didn't have a glorious career. I unfortunately never got deployed, as I got to see all my, I would say brothers and sisters, but really my friends and people that became very close to me, got to see them deploy. And, so for me, that was rather difficult, but I was able to, I went to field artillery school. I went to airborne school. I ended up becoming a company executive officer, which I'll explain that in a second. And a CO, a company commander, for an infantry drill sergeant unit based out of Quincy, Illinois, which is about, I can't even remember, 3-4 hours away from Columbia. Great unit of gentlemen and ladies who dedicated their lives and their careers to making sure that America was safe. So that was fantastic. The company executive officer essentially takes care of the day-to-day activities of their company. So they make sure that everybody has their training in line, that they're scheduled for their training, and that they're being taken care of. Whereas the company commander, of course, has a more bird's eye view opinion and steers the unit in the direction that meets the mission of the higher commands. So,
gotcha.
So that's essentially it. Loved every minute of it. God bless our military, man. I know that our military and our law enforcement right now, a lot of folks are crying foul over a lot of things, and I don't want to get into the politics, but God bless them for doing the job that they do. So,
you must be familiar with Simon Sinek and some of his studies in military and business.
I know a little bit about Simon Sinek. I own a couple of his books. For me, and I cannot, and this is a mortal sin of mine. I don't remember the author, but the book On Killing really goes into the psychological aspects of. I
know that one well. Actually, it's in the other room. I can't remember his name either. On Combat is fantastic.
Yes.
Have you read that? That was like eye-opening for me, man. There were just so many fascinating aspects of that book. I haven't read On Killing yet, but I'd like to. And he definitely kind of predated Simon Sinek in terms of that, because those books are a solid 15 years old, and that was probably when Simon Sinek was just getting his feet wet in this. But essentially he is coming from a business background and followed military companies around, and one of his more recent books is Leaders Eat Last. Right. And he was talking about how what the culture is like in a company, and how the younger, I don't know what, I don't know the names of all the different levels, but
I would just say your junior soldiers, right? Your 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
And quite frank, and not to interrupt, but I know exactly I know where you're going here. that's a crucial aspect, is making sure that your teams are taken care of before
Exactly.
you are. And to an extent, of course, and I have a little story for you. To an extent, you have to make sure, of course, that you're taken care of, because if you're the decision maker, if you're not taking care of yourself, then again, you're doing a disservice to those around you. I was blessed to be able to go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for a very short month. I was slated to go basically job shadow a special forces unit. Ended up getting transferred into a PSYOPs unit, psychological operations. And the psychological operations unit, their job was to do all the print work for comic books and, different types of pamphlets and flyers that they would, insert into areas where they wanted some information to get out. So while I was there, and these printers, man, they're the size of a small house. There was a general who had passed away, and I got you. There was a general that passed away, and we had to do a mission in support of him, and I can get into that later.
Cool. Great. Yeah, let's pick up with that when we come back. We'll take another quick break, and we'll be back in just a few, everybody. Hang tight.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network at www.talkingalternative.com. Now, broadcasting 24 hours a day. Talking Alternative.
Do you run or are ready to open your own business? Hi, I'm Jeremiah Fox. I've been operating and opening small business for the last 25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, talkradio.nyc.
Do you love or are you intrigued about New York City and its neighborhoods? I'm Jeff Goodman, host of Rediscovering New York, a weekly show that showcases New York's history and its extraordinary neighborhoods. Every Tuesday live at 7 p.m., we focus on a particular neighborhood and explore its history, its vibe, its feel, and its energy. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Graham Dobbin. Join me every Thursday evening for the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. We speak to people from business, sport, military and politics, all around what makes a great leader. The personal experiences of what's worked and, maybe more importantly, what hasn't worked. So, that's 7 o'clock every Thursday evening, the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. Listen to real stories of real leaders.
Talking Alternative Radio, 24 hours a day.
All right, everybody, we're back again with my guest, Ryan Clearwater, out of Como. Was that what it was called?
That's it. You got it.
Como. Como.
Oh, yeah.
Columbia, Missouri. So let's pick back up with that story. Great job catching that cue, too. You're sharp, man. You're ready for the big time.
I try.
Very good. Very good. Go ahead.
So
proceed.
So while I was at that unit, this general had passed away. There were members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that were going to be going to that unit or to that funeral. President was invited. There were all sorts of commanding generals from all military branches going to this thing. It was a big deal.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And my happy ass ended up being there during this like really important thing. College kid, and I was just wide-eyed, innocent as the day as I was born. And so what we ended up having to do was print, of course, the obituary, his story. It was a multi-page pamphlet.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get my printer in my home office to work half the time. So I had to rely on my soldiers who do this for a living, for a career, to get that job done. So for me, it was a not so much an ego check, because for me, when I find somebody that has the expertise and the knowledge to get something done 100% every single time, I'm going to defer to that individual. Now, am I going to ask questions? You bet I'm going to ask questions. But, and am I going to learn as much as I can? Am I going to be a sponge? Yeah, of course. But, so when that happened, when that general had passed away, all of a sudden we had, colonels, like on the low end, we had colonels that are, a colonel comes right before the first stage of being a general. We had generals, and then I think we did have a few maybe like upper ranks, like majors that weren't in that colonel to general range. But all of a sudden, everybody was in our unit, observing everything and asking questions and making sure that everything was running smoothly for this funeral. That mission took 96 hours. Of that 96-hour operation, we had pages and I know that this seems, it can sound silly when you talk about ink not matching up with other colors of ink and things like that. But I mean, if you think about a picture, or a T-shirt design, if you overlay the blues on top of the yellows wrong or the reds, I mean, everything is going to look like garbage. Mm-hmm. We had that at the very beginning. A lot of our product was not performing well. So because of that, and also a part of being a young leader, I felt like I had to be there, not necessarily be in charge, not necessarily have my hand in everything, but just be there so my soldiers could see. And I say my soldiers, again, I was only there for a month. However, during that time period, I was in charge of that. I was treated as if I was in charge of that unit. Mm-hmm. So during that period, I felt it was important to be seen. So much so that I was slamming Monsters, energy, 5 hours, and Red Bulls like they were the last on earth. And I started making mistakes at about it was 2.5 days in, no sleep. Of course, all my guys were on rotation, all my ladies were on rotation, but it was for me, I felt like I had to be there for everybody needed to see me. And so I started making mistakes. I started making bad judgment calls. I wasn't taking care of myself. My first sergeant came up to me and she said, "Sir, I need you to go to that office. I need you to turn off the lights. I need you to shut the door.
Give me the Red Bull."
Yeah. And I'm thankful for that lesson. She actually said, "Sir, you're getting in the way," and like that kind of forward, direct communication, I appreciated. And of course, there's always a time for that, but and that was definitely one of those times. So I got about 5 hours of sleep. I woke up refreshed, and we carried on the mission, got it done. The unit got some good recognition out of it. So it ended up being a win once I was able to recognize that I was being more of a detriment to my team than I was a help.
Yeah.
So it's always important to be able to realize, to have that kind of introspection and realize when things are going awry.
Yeah. What else can you cite from your time with the military that in terms of that leadership and along the lines of like some of the stuff that Simon Sinek and other authors have highlighted that have helped you as you transition, especially like with consulting?
Yeah. So again, early on when I was and a large amount of, I don't even want to call it a career, my schooling in ROTC, I was a jerk because I thought that that's what I was supposed to be. You know, you see it in the movies all the time. I mean, look at Full Metal Jacket, right? I thought I was him, but and what that did was it made me unapproachable. It made people feel alienated. And ultimately it hurt my leadership skills. I wasn't a patient individual, and actually it ended up, and normally I am a patient individual. So it ended up actually affecting me personally, and it kind of turned into this weird alter ego in a way. So, but once I recognized that was happening, and it took, I mean, I'm not saying that was a week-long, month-long, or even a year-long thing. I mean, that took years.
Yeah.
Once I realized that was happening, I was able to change that thought So I would say being able to be a patient individual, somebody who can empower people to make decisions that are appropriate, and maybe may not be the decision that you would make, but a decision that worked, right? And then being able to just communicate. I think that's those are some of the big other pillars of a good leader, a good person that cares about his people. I mean, it's in the title of Simon's book. Leaders eat last. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, I was doing that. He probably got it for me because I was doing that before the book came out. But yeah, I mean, it's 100% true. And so you always have to make sure that you're taking care of your people. You're asking them how, and quite frankly, I would even go a step further and say you're making sure that they're doing okay outside of their job.
Yeah, 100%.
Really investing yourself in the person, not the employee. I think that is crucial.
Yeah. I had a similar experience, but it was in business and running, especially restaurants, for other people. Going back to, I got my start in like 93. I was 16, 17 years old and
That's
got
awesome.
put into a management position. And these were older gentlemen who really came from another time in terms of business operation. It was a lot of that same mentality, that you had to be a jerk. You really just had to be an asshole to get the thing that you wanted done. And I picked up a lot of those traits. And especially once I moved to New York, I thought even more so, like, now I really get to be an ass.
Yeah.
And it was
you New Yorkers, man. You New Yorkers are strong-willed people.
we fucking love that, man. Give us just a reason to be an asshole. But it took some ego shedding and a lot of time to unpack that. Just like what you were saying, it was something that started for me, like I said, in like the early 90s, and I probably only really started to address it in the last 5 years, especially when I began training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
I see. Yeah. Nice.
These transitions are going so well.
Jeez Louise.
This is completely ad-lib, folks. I told him yesterday, like, we're going to talk about these three. I didn't know how we were going to get there, but it's just like getting that, because it just increased my knowledge and skill set, and that just the depth of the bandwidth went. I was like, wow, this house just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. How long have you been training for?
I've been training for about 2.5 years.
And you said yesterday you've because of work, especially what your duties as a public servant require. Oftentimes you don't get to train super often. Right. Yeah,
that's right. It does run in conflict. It's huge. I mean, as well as I do, there is of course a physical gain. But there's also a mental and an emotional gain to jiu-jitsu that honestly, there are very few places where you can find that kind of environment to sharpen yourself. Everybody that other than of course your bad apples that are one in a million.
Right.
It's iron sharpens iron day in, day out in the jiu-jitsu mats. And yeah, it's great. But yeah, I've been doing it about 2.5 years. Of course, with that, I have to take off 4 or 5 months every single year. And so where I get to go maybe 1 time a month or 2 times a month. Yeah. So
that's rough.
It's rough. And no amount of YouTube or jiu-jitsu documentary is going to do that. My dogs don't like it when I do it on them.
Right.
My wife has long fingernails that she won't cut. So
that's good training, though. That's good training. Control those hands.
Got to control the hands.
That's so awesome. Yeah, it was different for me. I trained every day because the school was right amongst all my businesses. So I just always had a bag packed. And every time there was a free hour, I was notorious for doing 6 classes in the day if time allowed.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was doing like more in a day than you were in a month sometimes.
But you're a pretty old guy, so I mean that's got to be a little sore on the muscles, right?
No. I take very good care of myself. Yeah. For a guy in his mid-40s, I recuperate really well. But I'd been prefacing that with some pretty hard training leading up to. My dad is a hard ass too. He's in his late 60s and still like winning bench press competitions. He's
good for him.
He's an anomaly. We call him Guns. His nickname is Guns because he's just
that's
like
fantastic.
Jacked. Yeah, that's
so cool. The fact that your father does that. My dad kept running and doing push-ups and sit-ups until he had to have complete knee and shoulder replacements.
Yeah. Well, he's up for those. He's just putting it off because he knows he's going to have to slow down once it happens.
But I'll tell you, man. I mean, there is something to be said for. I hear this all the time, and you see it, where people in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s tend to think that because they're no longer a teenager or 25. That for some reason they have this out to stop trying to better themselves. And what does that do for you? It does absolutely nothing. And so when you've got a father that does bench press, right? Or a father that does anything active, really, that's excellent. I mean, you can hear it from just about anybody. The second that you start doing any kind of physical training is the second that your mental decision-making process goes up, your mentality goes up, you become more positive because you fire of the day or the night before, and your emotional clarity, goes out through the roof. Yeah. I don't know how many, during that 5-month period, you could ask my wife, right? When I'm only going once or twice a month,
that's a mess.
Brother, there are times where she's like, I just need you to go to jiu-jitsu.
I know that story well.
Go lift some weights.
We're going to take one more quick break and we'll pick back up with that. I want to talk about jiu-jitsu for the rest of this show.
Let's do it.
All right, everybody. We'll be back in a few. Os.
Talking Alternative Radio, 24 hours a day.
Are you a curious person, always asking questions? Do you desire to be in the know? Then join me, Antonia, host of So Now You Know, Thursdays at 5 p.m. at talkradio.nyc. Listen in as I attempt to satisfy that curiosity. I will be talking with amazing, everyday people. Join the fun. So Now You Know on Thursdays at 5 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
TalkingAlternative.com.
Okay, everybody, we're back. And as promised, we're going to spend the rest of this hour talking about jiu-jitsu. No, not just, but we're going to rope in some of the things that Ryan was just mentioning towards the end of the last segment. The positive effects, can't stress it enough. The amount of just goodness that comes from daily physical activity, especially if you're trying to improve and if you own your own business, you're trying to do better in some company you work for. You want to have a better relationship with your spouse, partner, children, all of it. It raises your emotional intelligence and you look and feel good. You sleep better, right? What else did I miss, Ryan?
Oh my gosh. That's really good list. I'm sure we could probably add on to it.
There's more.
I'm sure there's definitely more. One of the things that I have found really great about the jiu-jitsu community those that last in jiu-jitsu set their ego aside.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about, right? It's like, that's what I was saying before, is I didn't really realize how much of like a shit salesman I was until I was on the mats. And I'd been there. No, I'm just saying, like, especially, this is going back 5 years, and I was a white belt. And I remember training with one of the owners. It was a couple that owns the dojo that I train at, and they're both black belts. And I was training with the lady, and she's excellent. She's a little smaller than me though. And, you know, if I really like used my strength, she was like, this just sucks. Like, neither of us are advancing. You're just pounding your head against the wall. And it's kind of silly. And so we started to talk about how I could mellow out and relax. And it began with grips, which is often the first, you know, and I was like, cool. So I started to work on that, and I would work with her regularly. And at one point, I had convinced myself I was relaxed. My body was relaxed. My breathing was relaxed, everything. And she was like, I need you to relax. And I was like, I feel like I'm relaxed. And she's like, look at your knuckles. And I was just holding her lapels, and they were just like white, but like my arm was relaxed. I had a calm, demeanor to my face. And it just really occurred to me then, like, how much I tricked myself over the years and put on the facade, especially for business, and I almost went home and cried. I was just like, oh my God, I'm such a shitty human. But it was the beginning. It was the beginning of a really great lesson in how to peel those layers away. And you're right. The people that only go to like blue belt, maybe to purple, and then they give up, you definitely don't get the depth again of that bandwidth. It just keeps, it's like a bottomless well, but you're getting water all along the way, but you just like never get to the end. And the people that last are the ones who really reap the benefit of that.
That's right. I mean, I will never forget my very first, I'm sure, I don't know. Do you remember your first class?
Oh, of course.
I do too.
Absolutely.
And let me ask, I'm not going to give it to you, but let me ask, was your first role with the instructor?
That didn't happen on my first class, but the first time, it's so funny because I started right when they opened up. It was their second school, and the other one was kind of far away. So like there was a little crossover of training, but I just stayed here, and I knew nothing about jiu-jitsu prior. He just opened up a couple doors down for me, and he was like, you're an athletic guy. You should come train. I think you'll like it. And I was like, this is when I was running 5 businesses. I had 4 and I was getting ready to open another one. And I was like, I'm kind of busy. And he's like, you'll make time. And I was like, is this guy crazy? And I did my first class, and I was like, oh, I'll adjust my schedule. I'll make this happen. Yeah. And, you go a couple months before you're actually live training, where you're just doing the basics and stuff like that.
That's right.
And so when they first started really the advanced classes, and we all got to do, because we were all brand new, we all started to do live training. And if it was an odd number of people, he would just hop down and train with you. So the first times I worked with him, I didn't know. I'm just like, having fun. And he was just like cat and mousing and having a good time. And I didn't even think about it. And then that stopped because the classes got big enough where he didn't have to be the extra person, and he was monitoring more. And then it was months before he asked me to train again. And I'd actually learned a few things. And I remember that first time he asked me, hey, do you want to stay and train a little bit? I was like petrified. I was like, oh shit. Like, I don't know what to do. And of course we slapped hands, and I went blank, and I was just like, and I, I was contorted in all these different ways. And he kind of put it on me a little bit that time. And then it was, it was like 4.5 years of trying to find where my, my ass was after that.
Well, and constant, like you keep pushing and pushing against the person. And like, you want to talk about a metaphor for life, right? Like the harder you push, it's not going to go.
And he always says that. He would always say, we can do this all day. You want to keep pushing? He's like, I got plenty of energy for this, but it would behoove you to not push so hard.
Yeah. So my very first role was with my black belt instructor. His name's Sean Woods. I had known Sean prior to that. He actually used to work at AT&T and sold me my very first cell phone. So when I went to this trip, so it was kind of wild. But my first role was with him, and let me think, loop choke. Right? No, it wasn't even a loop choke. He just got he got cross collar, and he just went like this, And I was, of course, in his guard, like everybody who's ever wrestled or grappled before does. And I just started driving into him, and he just went, Matt. And it was weeks before Thanksgiving. I will never forget this. It was weeks before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving Day was when I could finally swallow right.
I was going to say, were you drinking turkey out of a straw?
Oh my gosh, man. It was brutal. Yeah. I was so thankful that I was able to eat that day. But yeah, man, it's such a great experience. And then of course, like, there are other aspects of jiu-jitsu that are great. Of course, being able to meet new people.
Well, the community is so strong. And I asked my professor once, because we do Muay Thai as well. And I was teaching a lot of Muay Thai right up until everything was shut down. And I noticed that you just didn't get the same commitment from the standing arts. And we do fitness classes as well. Same thing as you do in jiu-jitsu. And I was like, why is that? And he said, man, look at the level of commitment you have to have just to do a class with a person. Like, it just supersedes all of the things. And it builds these bonds. You were talking earlier about investing in people. It's like you're investing in yourself, but you're investing in your training partners as well. And you develop this little crew, and like nobody, first of all, nobody's going to fuck with you because you destroy them. But it's like emotionally and spiritually, you connect with these people on just such a high level. And it, like you said earlier, such a metaphor for life and for business. I've always said that.
It's great.
We have to wrap up here in just a couple of minutes. I want you to tell people a little bit more about where they can get in touch with you and some of the things that you offer. So go. You got about 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'm not even going to take the full 2 minutes, man. But what I will tell you is I'm on Twitter at Ryan_Clearwater. Don't go follow the other Ryan Clearwater. It's not me.
Yeah, he's garbage.
He's garbage. So just so everybody knows, it's an inactive account for somebody else. So the guy's probably a nice guy. And then I'm on Facebook. My professional page on Facebook is the Ryan Clearwater. The other Ryan Clearwater, being a Chiefs fan, of course, the other Ryan Clearwater has to be an Oakland Raiders fan, which is like one of our big net divisional rivals. But those are my two big ones. If you want to reach out to me, Ryan at RyanClearwater.com. Website's RyanClearwater.com. There's a blog on there that's been working on a little bit here and there. Website I'm working on here or there. I'm doing all of this myself. And that's what I'll end on, is the fact that if anybody out there feels like they have an interest in something, doesn't matter if you've never done it before, learn it. Have a little bit of discipline, a little bit of grace when you're inevitably going to fail. But at the end of the day, if you're making steps in a positive direction, I don't think you or anybody else can fault you for that. So, so building my website on my own, I was able to learn a lot. Of course, just doing this podcast here with you. I've never done a podcast before. I've been on radio shows, but I've never done a podcast before. So thank you for that.
Fantastic.
So as long as you're moving forward and breaking down some personal barriers and learning some stuff, good on you. So that's my final thing I would like to say.
Awesome. Great stuff, man. So everybody, go do it. Good on you. Go get it. And do some jiu-jitsu.
Booyah.
Booyah. All right, everybody. Thank you, Ryan. The rest of you, have a great weekend. Take some of this positive energy. Go get some awesome stuff done. We're going to end with a os. Awesome work, man. Everybody, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web.
Talking Alternative Radio, 24 hours a day.
Do you you run or are ready to open your own business? Hi, I'm Jeremiah Fox. I've been operating and opening small business for the last 25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Graham Dobbin. Join me every Thursday evening for the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. We speak to people from business, sport, military and politics, all around what makes a great leader. The personal experiences of what's worked and, maybe more importantly, what hasn't worked. So, that's 7 o'clock every Thursday evening, the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. Listen to real stories of real leaders.
Hey, all you crazy listeners. Looking to boost your business? Why not advertise on Talking Alternative with very reasonable rates? Interested? Simply email at info@talkingalternative.com.
Are you a curious person, always asking questions? Do you desire to be in the know? Then join me, Antonia, host of So Now You Know, Thursdays at 5 p.m. at talkradio.nyc. Listen in as I attempt to satisfy that curiosity. I will be talking with amazing everyday people. Join the fun. So Now You Know on Thursdays at 5 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network at www.talkingalternative.com. Now, broadcasting 24 hours a day. Talking Alternative.
Do you love or are you intrigued about New York City and its neighborhoods? I'm Jeff Goodman, host of Rediscovering New York, a weekly show that showcases New York's history and its extraordinary neighborhoods. Every Tuesday live at 7 p.m., we focus on a particular neighborhood and explore its history, its vibe, its feel, and its energy. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.